Hello everyone, I am Storyteller. Thank you for visiting this peaceful place. I know you are looking for something soothing to help you fall asleep, and I am here to accompany you. If you enjoy, please give me a like and subscribe, and let me know where you are from. Thank you. Am I living in a haunted house? I lay in bed reading a horror book when I see movement from the corner of my eye coming from the other side of the closed curtain. I slowly lower my book, my mind screaming at me not to. There is a shadow floating on the right side of my window. At first, I thought it was the shadow of the flag, flapping in the wind, but quickly realized this is no flag. I stare at the shadow as it moves up, then to the left, then down, then to the right, before repeating the cycle again. What the heck is it? I mutter. The shadow changes shape repeatedly until it stops, and now resembles the head of a dragon. At first, my curiosity peaks, but then an unexplainable fear overtakes my senses, and I am on the verge of leaping out of bed. Whatever is distracting me does not bring peace my way, but a terror that will affect my lifetime. I thank God the curtain remains closed, for I do not care to see what is producing that shadow, for I had a feeling it will cause my sanity to leave me. Yet there seems to be an unknown force pulling me to the curtains. The shadow floats by my window for eternity, haunting me. I cannot pull my eyes from this shadow. Thankfully, it eventually dissipates, and I can relax. A weight lifts from my body, and the fear dissipates. I get up from the bed, wondering if I should go over to the window and throw open the curtains or exit the room. Restroom break, I say to myself as I open the door and walk down the hallway to the bathroom. This is the first eerie episode I had encountered in this house I recently occupied. A one-story home with a garage, living room, dining room, kitchen, laundry room, 3 bedrooms, and 1.5 bathrooms. No talk of evil spirits by the past owners, but would they honestly say such to me? For they did not look like such fools. They were the first occupants when the house came into existence, and all went well for them. That is what they say to the ignorant future owner. For the next week, I did my best to explain the bizarre episode. At first, a floating balloon entangled by the pole of the flag, but I never saw a balloon changing shapes by itself. My imagination tends to run wild, especially when I am reading a book. Could this be my imagination at work? I purchased a couple of small dogs to keep me company not long after. Not intimidating to the human world, but hopefully toward the ones from the beyond. It made me feel much better to have another living being in my house. A month went by when the next episode took place in my house. "Get out of there!" I call out to Bingo, the mischievous one, who is trying to get into the fireplace, for I have thrown the covering to the bacon into the place. As I went back to the recliner, I thought I heard a noise come from the back door. I stop in my tracks and listen for a time, but only hear Bingo moving about. I look around, not seeing Ringo, so possibly him. The dog's food and water dish are in the laundry room, close to the back door, so very will possible, so thought nothing of the matter as I go over to sit, and back to the book on the Crusades. Not long after I started reading, I heard the noise again. It sounded like something tapping on the door, then tapping the floor, then back to tapping the door. I sat there for about a minute, listening to the episode. "Ringo!" I called out. The tapping stopped. What is that dog doing? I get ready to walk around the corner and into the kitchen to the laundry room, when I hear a distinct sound that stops me in my tracks. The sounds of a heavy boot walking from the laundry room toward where I am. I look around, trying to find something to use as a weapon. I see the small baseball bat lying next to the chair. I quickly grabbed the bat as the steps came closer. I raise it up, ready for the intruder to come around the corner. If the intruder has a gun, my life will end. But I will get in a good swing or two, I hope. I continue to wait as the footsteps cross the kitchen floor, but seems to be taking too long to appear in front of me. I stand there, not sure what to do. The steps stop, and the anxiety goes up. For is the intruder going to appear, or do I go to it? I ponder if I should call out, but it would more than likely come out as a squeak, so kept my mouth shut. Perspiration covers my body as fear grips me. I stand for who knows how long, trying to decide what to do. Decision abruptly comes forth as I step forward toward the kitchen, with the bat raised to swing. I near the entrance to the kitchen, wondering if I should jump out or peek around the corner. Just get it over with, I thought. I leaped out, prepared to swing, but there was no one there. Instead, Ringo looked up at me. I looked toward the laundry room, seeing no movement. "There is no way you could have made those sounds," I said to Ringo. Ringo walked past me into the living room, leaving me to confront the intruder. I meandered through the kitchen toward the laundry room, preparing for the intruder to leap out. But when I entered the laundry room, there was no one there. I checked the doorknob, locked. What could have created those noises? I muttered. There was only one other place I had not checked out, and that was past the laundry room and into the bathroom. The room only had a sink and a toilet, so there was no space for the perpetrator to hide. I walked to the bathroom, seeing no one in the room. I went over to the window and saw it latched shut. "Nothing," I said. I turned around and was about to leave the bathroom when I heard the footsteps again. They started on the other side of the kitchen, coming toward me, but my eyesight saw nothing. I grabbed the doorknob and slammed the door shut as the steps entered the laundry room. I quickly locked the door as the steps came up to the door and stopped. I had the bat raised, ready for whatever tried to break in. If I still had my sanity, I would realize the bat would do nothing to my invisible terror. What am I experiencing? I thought. Too much horror I'm taking in that is bringing madness upon me. I am not a believer in ghosts. But is this what I am encountering? Am I living in a haunted house? I mutter. As I mutter the words, I hear the tapping on the floor, then on the back door, then back to the floor. This went on for a time before it stopped. Then the footsteps started up again, heading to the other end of the kitchen, ending. I slowly opened the door, seeing there was no one around. I need to get out of this area. I rushed toward the living room, at one moment feeling quite cold, but soon I was in the living room by the fireplace. Both dogs lay on the couch, looking at me. "What is your problem?" I can imagine them saying. I went over to the coffee table and grabbed the remote control, put on some sound, and hopefully that will calm me down. I turned on the television and turned up the volume. I did not want to hear the footsteps and the tapping. Part of me wanted to leave the house, to never return. The other half, thinking whatever was creating the noise was not causing me any harm, just freaking me out, I muttered. But not freaking my dogs out. I sat down in my chair, with the bat nearby, knowing the bat was useless against a ghost. But it was reassuring to have it near me. Anyway, the rest of the night, I sat in the chair, watching the tube, then dozed off to wake up an hour later, wondering if the ghost was still around. There is no way I'm going in that kitchen. I eventually dozed off again, waking up off and on throughout the night. My day at work was miserable due to lack of sleep. I spent the entire time contemplating on what I should do. I could move out, but then I would end up losing much money and wind up in an apartment, which I do not want to do. I could go to a church and have a priest bless the house. I could have a psychic or ghost hunter come in, or just live with it and get over my fears. If harm did not come my way, then I should be okay. But what about my sanity? It could make it an interesting home life, I muttered. My life was dull overall, so the reason I read so much of the fantastical. Living this kind of life in my house might be interesting. Of course, part of me screaming I was insane to have such thoughts. It came to me living at the house, encountering footsteps once a month, and little odd things happening. At first, scared, but eventually I became numb. Soon, I was like my dogs, and just enjoyed the roof over my head, no matter how bizarre it was to live under it. Out for the count. A knock, knock, knock came from the top of his coffin lid. Eckhard Freud closed his eyes and gritted his teeth. One day's sleep was all he wanted. One day of peace. That damn boy would jump at the shadows of his own bat wings. Eck pushed up his coffin and glared at the boy. not even deigning to sit upright. He kept his arms crossed over his chest. "Yes, Dunstan. What is it?" Dunstan Greaves stood there in his PJs, holding a blanket. He shifted from one foot to the other, looking awkward. "I heard a noise, Ek." Ek's eyebrows rose. He tried to keep his voice even. "A noise? You woke me, Count Freud, from his slumber for a noise? Well, what kind of a noise was it? A vampire hunter coming to stake me? The village populace come to burn me? What?" Dunstan looked at his feet. He prodded the floor with his toes. "Well, no. It was a different kind of sound. A spooky sound. A spooky sound. A spooky Ek sat up. "You're an undead creature of the night, Dunstan. You're over 300 years old. And I turned you when you were 24. You can't be afraid of every creak and groan in this old manor. And most importantly, you can't be waking me whilst I'm getting my sleep." Dunstan sagged. He looked miserable. "Kay, sorry." Ekahard likewise deflated. Who could say no to those hypnotic eyes? They made him feel like a monster. "Tell me, Dunstan, what can I do to make you feel better?" Dunstan brightened a little. "Well, I guess, maybe, I could sleep in with you today, Ek?" He paused before hurrying on. "Just for today, I promise I'll sleep in my own coffin tomorrow." Ekahard closed his eyes. "Beelzebub, give him strength." Fine. But just for today, I swear to the old ones that this is the last time, though." The boy started to scramble in. "Oh, thanks a lot, Ek. It makes me just feel safer, you know? I can sleep soundly, knowing you're there to protect me." Ek scooched over to the far side of the coffin. The casket maker hadn't constructed it with two bodies in mind. All right. But don't hog all the duvet. You've got your own blanket there. And leave me some of the pillow, damn it." The boy snuggled down. His breathing slowed. "Thanks, Ek. You're the best. G'day, buddy." Ekahard's grumpy exterior melted a tiny bit. He grumbled. "Well, it's all right. Good day, Dunstan." Dunstan jumped, propping himself up on his elbows. "Did you hear that?" Ekahard groaned. One day, one single day, that was all he asked for. "Sleep," he groaned. "Lemme sleep." Dunstan remained half upright, listening. He raised a finger in the twilight of the closed coffin. A heavy thud and scrape came from beyond the casket's walls, as if on cue. "That," Ekahard frowned. He blinked away the sleep in his eyes. Yes, he had heard that. A bat of worry fluttered its wings in the dusty corridors of his ancient heart. Could Dunstan's paranoia be hitting the stake on the head for once? "What was it? I don't know. Ek, I think it's what I heard earlier. There's somebody else in the house. There's something in here with us. That woke him up faster than a snort of garlic. Could it be vampire hunters? He thought all the hunters had gone extinct and passed from reality into folklore and legend. He didn't believe any existed anymore. But if they did, he ought to do something. He stirred, starting to sit upright. All right, he said, running a hand over his face. You wait here, boy. I'll check it out. If there's trouble, fly away. Be careful, Eckhard pushed open the coffin lid. He slipped like liquid through the gap, letting it close without a sound, sealing the boy safe inside. Outside, in the dark, thanks to those fancy blackout blinds, Ek's senses adjusted to the house. He sniffed the room, eyes glinting like a cat's. He attuned himself to the very particles of air as they floated around him. Something shifted down the corridor. A faint blue glow throbbed. A thud, a scrape, and a moan whispered along the floorboards. Ek's teeth extended, and his sharpened nails itched for a fight. Well, bathe him in holy water. Dunstan was right. Could you say the boy was crying wolf when against all odds there was one? Sometimes the boy had unfounded fears, but this time his intuition had proved to be an ally. Ek owed him an apology if he lived to see the moon's light again. Lighter than the motes of dust drifting in the gloom, he stalked towards the disturbance. A man was standing in the grand foyer, his back turned. He had an eerie, ethereal shine and swayed from side to side. His ripped shirt dangled from him in tatters. He appeared to be speaking to someone. A human? Foolish, foolish. Eckhard pounced. The man's body offered no resistance, and Ek passed through him as though he weren't there. Cold electricity crackled over Ek's skin as he pierced the stranger's form. Ek thudded into the wall, head spinning, bewildered. He looked up at his failed would-be victim, bats fluttering in his vision. The misty surface of the man's skin strode in the gloaming. He looked down upon Eckhard, eyes furious, face drawn in a rictus of mourning. One side of his neck was a gaping black hole from which ink-black blood had gushed and stained both skin and cloth. He raised a hand and pointed at Eckhard, wailing, "Uh-oh." Eckhard had killed this fellow the other night. He'd brought him back to their place as a late-night snack. It wasn't good for his digestion, but sometimes you had to indulge. Other ghosts apparated on either side, like unwhacked whack-a-moles. "I am Shane Abbott," moaned the ghost, "and you have wrongfully killed me. I have woken the others too." There were many. Other voices joined in a choir of the dead. Oh, so many. Oh, sweet Je. Ah, Oh, sweet Nosferatu. Wasn't that a kick in the blood-sucking teeth? The only way to get rid of ghosts was with an exorcism. And the only way to have an exorcism was with a priest. What vampire in their right mind would invite a priest into their home? They could spritz you with holy water or brandish a crucifix at you. And if the holy man did get rid of the hauntings, what then? They'd, bless the place. Dunstan's voice called out from the other room. Eck? Everything all right? Dunstan, my boy, said Eck, not breaking eye contact with the head ghost. I don't want to sound all aflutter, but I have bitten off more than I can suck here. We ought to contact the council. We need to vampire outside help. Gardener's World. You've chosen a good time to pay me a visit. I've pulled up some pretty decent leeks this morning. Got some lovely onions in the store and a rosemary bush that is totally oblivious to all the nonsense that seems to have befallen our world. My garden really has been my savior, my little farm. I can grow what I need and get by very nicely on what my garden supplies. I do wish I'd had a better crop of carrots. I used the finest bone meal fertilizer, but they were a total bust this year. My soil is a little too heavy for them, too much clay. But it's the carrot fly that really did for them. They said our biggest enemy was the sickness. Then they tried to say it was the foreign governments. Then it was all about misinformation and the enemy within. But I survived because I knew all along my only real enemy is carrot fly. When the gas supply was cut off back in 25, I opened up an old fireplace so I could cook on an open flame indoors. Not a pretty job, no power tools, naturally. So, me and Axe had to do most of the heavy work, hacking out the wall they'd used to gag the old hearth. I like it though. The exercise, solving problems, working out a plan to get me to the next crop. Most of the stuff we've lost, I didn't care for anyway. You're lucky today with the weather. It gets too smoky and hot indoors, even with the chimney. No, on a day like this, we cook al fresco. Something lovely about doing my cooking in the place where I get most of my food. I'm a man of nature. That's what I am. You saw my roses on the way in, didn't you? It's the roses and the raspberry canes that bring people to my garden. I took part of the fence down so people can see them more easily, so they can come in and explore. Fancy that. In times like these, someone actually taking part of a good, strong fence down. Well, there's method to my madness. I like to have visitors. Brought you here to me today, didn't it? Relax. Enjoy the sun. Would you like some water? I've got plenty. Since the neighbors have been thinning out, I've been using their houses' guttering, as well as my own, to collect the rain. Been able to grow in their gardens too. That's why I'm doing so well in these tough times. That's why I can afford to lose a few raspberries to curious, hungry bypassers. Waste nothing and work hard. That's me. Do whatever needs to be done. Please, have some water. But how is he going to cook out here, you ask? A very good question. Let me just remove this old tarp. And ta-da! An old enamel bath. Not as common as they once were. But this beautiful old iron roll top was in my neighbor's place. He was a lawyer in the old days. Fat lot of good that did him. Must have cost a fortune. Weighs a ton. I convinced them to help me carry it here in exchange for some food and water. And here we are, those old claw and ball feet holding it up above my fire. An antique bath sitting on my lawn in the shade of my willow. Heaven, you look a bit concerned. Don't worry about the staining on the sides of the bath. That's inevitable when you cook with direct heat like this. It looks dirty, but it's not. It's just well seasoned from all the grease and juices. I'll just get this fire lit. Thank you for gathering all of this wood, by the way. Told you I'd trade you for water and the raspberries, didn't I? I'm a man of my word. We'll need a couple of buckets of water for the tub. And what else? I think today we'll have a couple of these leeks. No carrots, though. Curse you, carrot fly. And I think we'll have a big, dirty handful of the fresher stems from my gnarly old rosemary bush. Don't worry, the heat will kill the germs. I'll use some of this too. Take a look. It's a pot of fat. My grandma would have called it dripping. You must keep this stuff. It's more valuable than gold, literally, these days. I preserve it whenever I cook. It's full of calories and protein and goodness. It keeps for ages. I've got a cupboard full of it. This is from the last few rabbits I cooked. It's a bit of a cocktail, to be honest. Rabbits, rats, squirrels, street rats, raspberry thieves. Only joking, they weren't thieves. You're not a thief. I can spare a few raspberries. I'm going to get this beautiful stuff, nice and hot, and then get the leeks in there. Then the water and the rosemary. Axe, get over here, you big lump. He looks brutal, but I keep him sharp enough to chop the leeks. Look, he's bright as a sushi knife. I can use him to shave. Look close. There now. A slice of leek you can see through. That will just melt in the fat. My mouth is watering. Did you hear that? I love that sound, that sizzle. The popping twigs under the bath. The first chunk of leek sliding around in there, in all that greasy goodness, hissing and cackling. The sun weeping through the old willow. No more horrible planes overhead. No traffic. No more reports about all the doom and gloom. No more sirens, just a sizzle and a pop, and the waft of home cooking on the late summer breeze. Potatoes. How could I forget potatoes? I sometimes think I'm losing my mind. Not many of this year's crop left, but this is the best way to use them. They add body. Oh, that was unintentional, sorry. Please don't be upset. Poor taste has no place in my garden. Well, I must say, it's been nice to have someone to talk to other than Axe. It has been a while. The raspberries will be dying off soon, and the roses won't last for much longer after that. I suspect I'll be getting fewer visitors. But never mind. I'm going to have plenty of provisions to keep me strong over the winter. And there's still blackberries out, so you never know. I'll be fine in the house, sleeping in the cellar with Axe. Anyway, looks like we've got a rolling boil going here. So sorry, but it's bath time. The guinea pigs. Dr. Travers ticked all the boxes on my consent form, and peering over his glasses, assured me an arm transplant was standard practice. I perform 10 a day, he said, handing me the paperwork. They're a piece of cake. Really? For sure, he said, indicating where to sign. It's just brain surgery that gives me a headache. Stella. The anesthetist rolled her eyes, sighed, and asked if I'd any allergies. None, I replied, scanning the small print. That's just perfect, she said, clearing her throat. Would you prefer gas and air, or the full works? What's the norm? I said, catching her eye. That depends. She smiled. Are you squeamish? Chauza. When I signed up for military service 5 years ago, I'd selected the BAGS health insurance option. Biologically Accelerated Growth Systems, or BAGS, for short, was a third-party company pioneering an experimental limb replacement scheme. The government initiated the idea, and the Ministry of Defense embraced the concept to counteract the ongoing threat of IEDs. In the event of a severe injury or amputation, they promised us rapid treatment and substitute limbs. All they required from volunteers were 2 pints of blood and sufficient genetic material to cultivate a trauma clone in their body farm. It made sense, and I had nothing to lose, hopefully. I have to admit that the lure of the extra pay motivated me when I signed the forms. Any potential injuries gained in active combat were far from my mind, and further complications seemed a remote possibility. It was during the 6 months of basic training I discovered no one else had enrolled for the BAGS insurance policy. Perhaps everyone reckoned the scheme was just a gimmick. Maybe I'd misread the caveat on the consent form about transplanting living tissue. I mean, it never occurred to me I'd meet the limb donor face to face. Tutua, my last tour of duty, occurred in April 2015. Around the time jihadist fighters released a video of the ancient city of Nimrud, erupting in a cloud of dust and smoke. They attacked its priceless sculptures and frescoes with sledgehammers and power tools, then detonated the 3,000-year-old Assyrian ruins. The wanton demolition came amidst a wave of attacks on Allied forces in Iraq. I lost my left forearm in Nasiriyah, about 360 clicks south-southeast of Baghdad, near the ruins of the ancient city of Ur. Sergeant Albury snagged his boot tip on a tripwire and didn't stand a chance. He was toast in an instant, poor sod. I was next in line, and the landmine's devastating blast threw me across the street. So much for the cradle of civilization. There was little below my left shoulder when I regained consciousness in the field hospital's ICU. The duty surgeon said I was under the knife for 10 hours and told me I was lucky to be alive. He expected a full recovery, having extracted a bucket of the shrapnel from my vital organs, although he expected roving fragments to surface over time. If you have any further issues, he said, picking his teeth, I'm sure your regiment's medics will sort you out. Yeah, right, I thought. But you know what? He wasn't wrong. A serious-minded BAGS employee in an expensive suit attended my bedside the following day and explained the benefits of my policy. He presented a convincing case for urgent action and applied for a consultation on my return to base. I waited 6 weeks for an appointment to discuss my suitability for a limb transplant. Dr. Travers was frank. Either he operated forthwith, or I faced an interminable desk job back at HQ and no more active duty. Are there any risks? I asked. The odds of rejection are slim, he said, frowning. But better than your career prospects as a shorthand typist. Point taken, I said, considering my disadvantage. Dr. Travers glossed over the matter of sourcing and matching a spare limb. It's not all about physical compatibility, he said. There's the psychological aspect to consider. I recall biting my lip when he explained a typical post-op response. It'll be disconcerting and may feel as if it doesn't belong to you, he said. However, just remember, an unfamiliar appendage is far better than the alternative. I'd no time to worry about the details because my allotted day in the operating theater happened within 48 hours. I didn't sleep the night before and entered the theater feeling lightheaded, having followed the nil-by-mouth instruction beforehand. Stella performed her last checks before a nurse handed me a surgical gown, and Dr. Travers scrubbed his hands while we waited for the trauma clone. The freezing cold hiatus on my back in the theater, wearing only a starched cotton gown, was the longest hour of my life. I was covered in goosebumps and shivering from a cold sweat when a masked nurse poked a gurney through the theater's swing doors. She appeared without a drum roll or fanfare, as if she was shoving a burdensome shopping trolley out of a supermarket. The nurse halted parallel to my surgical table, kicked down the brakes, and whipped off the thin sheet to reveal my doppelganger's naked body. It was wired up to a cluster of electrical body monitor pads and strapped down to the metal bed with sturdy leather belts. The left arm sported thick red pre-surgery symbols that looked like a gang member's colors and hanged loose and lifeless above the linoleum. He lay motionless beside me, staring past a bloated plasma bag that dangled aloft and fed blood to an intravenous cannula. Dr. Travers raised his arms and cracked his knuckles and nodded at Stella. She wasted no time and administered a heavy dose of propofol. I remember her asking me to count down from 10, but don't recall getting past 7. When I regained consciousness, my body double was still next to me, an exact copy, except now the left arm was missing, and there was a sutured wound below the shoulder. His eyelids were closed and motionless, except for an occasional REM flutter, and his chest rose and fell in even-paced undulations, as if operated by mechanized bellows. On closer inspection, the trauma clone was nothing like me. There were neither scars and stretch marks, nor any signs of life's long-term damage. The left arm I'd received was similar in size and shape to my original. I thanked God for my replacement, despite needing months of gym work to strengthen it. Yes, size-wise, it was a splendid match, and Dr. Travers had done a remarkable job. It's just that, well, I don't know. I guess I'll miss that barbed wire tattoo circling my forearm, and all my ginger freckles too. My ex-wife used to love those silly brown spots. "Nobody's perfect," she'd say. If only she knew she could see me now. The adoption process takes time, Dr. Travers said during our meeting a week later. You ought to be home soon, and you'll adjust in a few weeks. Will it ever feel like mine? I said, flexing my stiff new fingers. Of course, he said, cleaning his spectacles. Besides, I'm only a phone call away if you need reassurance. Dr. Travers couldn't guarantee the pairing process would work, and I had to be prepared for rejection. He outlined likely symptoms in case the donor's hand didn't marry up with my nervous system. It was a long month in the BAGS Institute while I acclimated to my new limb. I followed the physio's guidelines for recovery and adhered to her plan, exercising as much as possible. The Institute's layout was straightforward. The building supported 8 levels, and most floors contained glass-partitioned offices. As far as I knew, the first floor contained the surgical theater and recovery wards, and the windowless ground floor housed the gym, storage units, and a boiler room. My first floor ward was empty, and I was alone most days, apart from Nurse Winter's morning welfare visits and meal deliveries, and Dr. Travers' weekly progress checks. I seldom encountered any other members of staff on any of the 8 floors, and met nobody in the gym, pool, or sauna facilities. Apart from intermittent security patrols, there were only a couple of employees engaged in gardening and exterior maintenance work. It was on my last day that we had a power cut, and the building lost its heat and lighting. I was exiting the gym at the time, cast into darkness by the occurrence, and strayed down an unfamiliar corridor. It was about 10 minutes before the green overhead emergency lights kicked in, by which time I found myself in one of the storage units. Somehow, I'd bypassed the security system in the outage and found myself lost in a maze of boxes, sealed containers, and cargo bays. I admit being disorientated by the experience. However, a sudden thought occurred. Until that moment, I'd never considered my trauma clone's whereabouts. Where was he? And what condition was he in? Was there accommodation here? Dr. Travers had led me to believe the Institute looked after and supported my trauma clone. So, why had he forbidden me to talk to him or make contact? I was pondering these questions as I meandered down a gentle sloped vehicle access ramp into the basement. As soon as I entered the lower corridors, I heard a low, stuttering hum of clicks and splutters. I thought it was a chattering mechanical turbine spluttering to life. I was wrong. The noise had an organic quality and enveloped me in slow pulses, like surf dissolving between fractured seashells on a distant shore. I stumbled onwards in the pale amber glow until I could advance no further. The light was emanating from translucent ceiling panels within a glass-walled room. Below it stood motionless figures connected to an upper gantry by a complicated loom of feeding tubes and electrical sensor cables. Life support systems, I imagined. The figures all shared similar characteristics, but differed somewhat in musculature, as if they were cuttings taken from a parent and propagated at staggered intervals. They were all naked and standing in equally spaced rows and columns, like life-sized chess pieces, awaiting a call to arms. There were at least 20 of them, all staring ahead with uncomprehending, glazed eyes and indifferent expressions. The wretched creatures were like a herd of cattle grazing in a pasture, oblivious to time and tide, and at the mercy of unknown assailants. I advanced towards the glass wall, and the closest figure's head turned to face me. It was obvious from his missing limb and sutured shoulder that we'd met before. There was a spark of recognition in those dilated pupils, like a dim, flickering light from a dying star. He edged forward as far as his tethers would allow, and raised his right arm in painful increments. All the while, those black pools of artificial existence held their intense, unflinching gaze. His fingertips reached to their full extent, like an unfurling leaf, and stroked the surface of the glass between us. I placed my left hand on the transparent surface and spread my fingers. Without so much as a blink, he mimicked my gesture. Our raised palms mirrored each other, either side of the shatterproof glazing. My hand flinched, as if gripped by its rightful owner, or some vestigial impulse dictated its movement. I hesitated for more than a minute as it twitched and writhed of its own accord. I lowered my eyes, tearing myself from his pitiable stare. 15 millimeters separated us, and yet we were worlds apart, as if we were distant relatives meeting in some parallel universe. I imagined some warmth in his palm, and supposed his instinctive gesture was meant to keep me there. He turned away and returned to his designated position amongst all my other clones. They were all looking at me now. My back spasmed with an intense, muscular shiver, as if I'd felt an icy blast. It was impossible to remain there with all those pairs of eyes judging me. I rubbed my hands together for warmth as I walked away, and I realized my clone wasn't born. He was created. He hadn't emerged from nature. The Institute reared and propagated him from cells which they'd nurtured to a mature specimen. That notion should have consoled me, but it didn't. Dr. Travers was adamant. The trauma clone didn't have a life as such. No family, no memories, and no real concept of a world outside. That was how he told me to frame the situation. "You're lucky," he said. "Not everyone has a chance to replace all their vital organs." I felt sick, looking down at my left arm afterwards, and recalled that awful stump on my doppelganger. Now, I'd encountered him in person. It felt as if I'd been caught red-handed, receiving stolen goods, and by chance met the lawful owner. "Don't worry about it," Dr. Travers said, placating my concerns. I couldn't be at peace with the notion, but I accepted he was right. How else could I live with myself, knowing that the trauma clone's only function was to donate spare parts? There was a guard of honor as I departed that evening, and I wondered what would happen if my trauma clone escaped. Would he survive in the outside world, or just succumb to nature's mercy, like a domesticated pet that's lost its natural instincts? As I walked across the deserted compound to my vehicle, I couldn't imagine returning here unless the worst happened. I supposed I'd only meet my trauma clone again if I was unlucky during my next tour in the Middle East. But who knows? They hadn't patched me up to stare at a PC all day. "Charles?" He said he'd be here an hour ago. I decided to go to sleep, because I have to get up early tomorrow. I told him that. I told him that I was going to Montreal to see my ex-boyfriend because we might be getting back together. We might be getting back together, even though my ex-boyfriend refuses to move back to the United States because he says we're a country built on the graves of the innocent. As if every country isn't like that. I told the guy I was talking to that I wanted to hook up before I left tomorrow. Because if I end up back with my boyfriend, then it'll be a little bit like going into prison, because my ex-boyfriend insists on monogamy, even though he knows I don't believe in it. I don't cheat. So if we get back together, I'll be loyal to him, and I'll get bored pretty quickly. A hookup before then will be my last good meal before incarceration. I told him I was submissive, even though I'm feeling dominant tonight. I told him I like normal stuff, even though I know the word normal can be problematic. I told him my name is Charles. It's not. He's not entitled to know things about me. Whoever he is, and however the night was going to go, I was never going to see him again. I don't believe in friends with benefits. I believe a one-night stand should only last for one night. I believe it makes the experience hotter if you know it's going to be singular. I gave him my address. He told me he was a few miles away. I could see that he was telling the truth. He shared his location on the app. Yes, there he was, a few miles away. I told him I was looking forward to seeing him. I was. He looked handsome in his photos, a little older than the age on his profile, but people lie about that. People lie on the apps. I lied. I said my name is Charles. It's not. I'm not entitled to the truth any more than he is. He says he's 35. I don't think he is. It's okay. I don't need him to be 35. I just need him to look like his photos. He sent 4. In 3, he looks very handsome. In the 4th, I'm not sure. It's all a risk, a gamble. You roll the dice. You give out your address. You give access to a stranger. You're a man. Why would you be scared? Men are still men. Gay men are still men. Men don't need to be afraid. When have I ever really been afraid? He didn't show up in a few minutes. I know right away I'm being stood up. He's flaking on me. It happens. I send a message. The app tells me he sees it. He reads it, but he doesn't respond. I send a hello? I send a I send a dude, seriously? I debate sending a rant, a tirade. I debate lecturing him on wasting my time. I decide it's not worth it. His spot on the shared map doesn't move. I decided to go to sleep. I let a little negativity in. I tell myself he wouldn't have flaked if I was cuter. He would have showed up if I weighed 10 pounds less. He would have come if my hairline wasn't receding. It's my fault. I'm disgusting. That's why my ex broke up with me. Not because he moved to Montreal to work for a marketing company there. It was me. It was because he wanted to get away from me. I go to sleep without packing my suitcase like I had promised myself I would. Now, I'll have to do it quickly tomorrow, and I'll be rushing to the airport, and I'll be cursing myself the entire time, but I'll be blaming the guy from last night who never showed up and sent me down a shoddy path. I'm woken up by my phone vibrating. I've always been a light sleeper. My ex used to wake me up with his snoring. I mentioned it to him once, and he was embarrassed. Maybe that was why he decided to break up with me. Why would I complain about something like that? Who do I think I am? I look at my phone. I've only been asleep for 20 minutes. I check to see why the phone is buzzing. I'm hoping my ex has texted to say, "Looking forward to seeing you tomorrow, XOXO," but I don't have any new text messages. I should have known from the tone of the vibration. That was the app. I have a new message. It does occur to me that it might be the flaky guy from earlier. Maybe something came up and he wants to apologize. I look at the message. Yes, it's from him, but it's not an apology. It says, "Your name isn't Charles." I tell myself, he's a weirdo. He is. He is a weirdo. Who sends something like that? I don't question how he knows my name isn't Charles. He might have found me on social media. He might have talked to someone else on the app that knows my name isn't Charles. He might have gone to hook up with some other guy, and they got to talking about me. How I'm a liar. How my photos make it look like I weigh less, and my hairline isn't receding. He might have always known my name wasn't Charles. We might have talked prior to this, and I didn't know it, because I delete the app every other day, because I hate having it on my phone. I hate being on there. I hate all apps, even the ones that say they're for dating, even though they're really all for sex. He might have been playing with me this entire time, mocking me without me realizing it. Flaking was part of the game. I block him. I need to go back to sleep. A minute later, the phone vibrates. It's that same specific buzz. I look at the phone. Yes, I have a new message. I check. Your name isn't Charles. How did he message me? Does he have another profile? No, it's the same profile. I block him again, but this time, his profile doesn't even disappear. It must be a glitch in the app. Great. It's bad enough these apps have destroyed interpersonal connections, but now they don't even work properly, if they ever did. I delete the app from my phone. I'll re-download it if my ex doesn't want to get back together. But he will. And this time, we'll make it worth it. So I'll never have to download it again. I'm only going to think positive things moving forward. I'm going to do what my therapist tells me. And I'm going to drink water. And I'm not going to set my time on fire by being on apps. The phone vibrates. The app is back. How is it back? Apps have glitches, but they can't download themselves onto your phone once you take them off. That can't happen. Yes, a message. Your name isn't Charles, something else. I notice his distance has moved. He isn't 4 miles away anymore. Now he's 3 miles away. He's a mile closer than he was. Why? I look at the shared location. He stopped sharing. I can't see the dot anymore. Can he do that? I don't remember anyone being able to do that. But I don't remember any of this being possible. I blocked him. I shut him out. How is he still here? How is he still messaging me? My phone vibrates. Tell me your name. This isn't right. I get out of bed. I nearly trip over the 2 piles of clothing I left unfolded on the floor. What should I do? I think about contacting the police. But what are they going to do? I'm just some guy who was looking for no-strings sex on an app after midnight. They won't take me seriously. And so what if the guy is coming here? I live in an apartment building. He can't get inside. The lobby door is locked. He doesn't know what floor I'm on. He doesn't know which door is mine. I delete the app again. I'm safe. There's no reason I shouldn't feel safe. But now, I can't sleep. I decide maybe now is a good time to start packing. I'll make the most out of this anxiety. I'll pack my suitcase. I'll get things in order. I might even leave early for the airport. Why not? I've never been early for anything in my life. But why not start now? The whole point of the trip is to become a new person, a better person. I never should have gone on the app in the first place. I'm practically taken. I'm practically in a relationship. I should have just gone to bed. Another vibration. I look at the phone. Your name isn't Charles. Then, very quickly, tell me your name. I check the distance. I can't help myself. He's a mile away. How did he move so quickly? Have I lost my sense of time? What time is it? Why is he bothering to drive all this way? I explained to him when we first spoke that I live in an apartment. I told him that I would have to buzz him in. He must know I'm not going to do that now. He must know that even if someone else lets him into the building, he'll never figure out which floor I'm on and which apartment I'm in. And even if he did, I'm not going to open my door for him. He can't get to me. Why won't he just give up? And why is he badgering me about my name? Why does it matter? I wanted him to come over. I asked him to. He was the one who stood me up. He was the one who didn't show. Why is he angry with me? Because I lied? Because I lied about my name? Why does he care about my name? A vibration. Does Charles live in apt number 407? Or is that you? That can't be right. I never gave him my apartment number. I'd never be that stupid. I have a system for this. When I invite someone over, I check the lobby camera to make sure they look like their photo. Then, I buzz them in. It's only when they've signed in with the security guard in the lobby that I let them upstairs. That's when I tell them which apartment is mine. I'm smart. I'm smart about this kind of thing. How does he know my apartment number? Does he know me? Is this a catfish? Has he been over here before? Is someone playing a joke on me? I call downstairs. The security guard answers the phone. I don't know his name. I think it might be Trevor, but I'm not sure. I don't interact much with the nighttime security guards. Hello? Excuse me? This is number 407. I was wondering if you could do me a favor. If someone shows up. Sorry, the security guard says. What's your name? I nearly dropped the phone. Why? You said you're in number 407, but I need to know your name. I've lived here for 8 years. I'm sure you have, but I need to know your name. Can't you just look it up? I can't. I'm sorry. What's your name? Something occurs to me. Is it you? I'm sorry. Are you the one doing this? Is it you? I don't give him a chance to answer. I hang up. The phone vibrates. I check the message. Buzz me in. I want to boil the phone in water. I want to put it in the microwave. I want to dump it in the air fryer. But I need it for tomorrow. I need to let my ex know when my plane takes off and when it lands. I need to let him know that I'm getting an Uber when I get there, because he's going to be busy at work, so he can't pick me up. And that's fine. That's not a big deal. This is a big deal. Why is this? A new message. Never mind. I'm in. No. 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 How can he be? I check the lobby cam. There's nothing there. It's black. The screen is black. Why do I pay for security if I can't see the lobby cam? Why do I pay for a security guard who just wants to ask my name over and over again? Why do I pay to keep people out if they can get in? I look at the distance. He's less than 100 feet away. I'm in the elevator. I think about responding to him. I think about telling him that he can't come in. I won't let him. I think about begging him to go home. I think about telling him that I'm going to call the police. I think about saying I'll kill him. I think about saying that I'll beat him to death with a baseball bat. I don't own a baseball bat, but he doesn't know that. Does he know that? What does he know? Just got off on the 4th floor. No, I consider pushing my couch in front of the door. But why? Can he break down a door? Is he that strong? He doesn't look strong in his photos. He looks lean and in shape, but not capable of breaking down a door. But is that him? Were those photos really him? Could this be an entirely different person? Should I scream? Will my neighbors hear me? Will they care? It's so late, and a knock. My mouth is dry. All the salivas turned to sweat and pooled in my armpits and down my backside and over my palms, while my feet are stone cold and my breath refuses to calibrate. I move towards the door. I don't sense anybody on the other side. Would I sense it? Could I trust myself to sense it? Earlier, I thought I had everything under control. I had lined up a nice fling before flying off to Montreal. I knew what the night was. I knew what the morning would look like. What do I know now? I lean my ear against the door. Will I hear breathing? Will I hear the shuffling of feet? The cracking of knuckles? I hear nothing. I wish I had a peephole. Why don't I have one? I don't have one, because by the time someone reaches your door, you're supposed to know who they are. You're supposed to know that they belong there. I hear nothing. I think about opening the door, the way someone who finds themselves trapped on a ledge might wish to simply fall and have it be done with. I think about opening the door and welcoming in whatever might be on the other side. I think about letting the vampire taste me. After all, he's already here. Instead, I do it. I close my eyes and I whisper something. My name, my real name. The phone vibrates, and then I hear the sound of someone walking away. Wichita. Grub servings. 7. Preparation. Time varies based on resistance of ingredients. Ingredients. 1. Eye of newt. 1 toe of frog. 150 grams wool of bat. 1 tongue of dog. 10 scales of dragon. A pinch of dead man's blood. A drop of a virgin's tear. 1 swollen, pus-filled Wichita grub for flavor. Preparation. A. Acquire pre-selected ingredients from their natural habitats. Successful extraction requires careful attention to prevent accidental damage. 1. Newt. Net the newt in a crumbling inner-city neighborhood. Still in his teens, the newt is most often found in the company of the local drug-dealing street gang he aspires to be part of. His watchful eyes make him a valuable resource. His fresh-faced appearance keeps him discreet. Optimal time to secure is while he keeps watch for the law and rival gang members outside a dilapidated apartment complex, casting furtive glances into alleys. His attention focused on the addicts and intimidating shadows that wander and lurk there. 2. Frog. Fetch the frog. at the edge of an abandoned industrial rooftop on the outskirts of the city. Her athleticism and powerful 20-something-year-old legs have made her a viral sensation, courtesy of elaborate, self-recorded parkour videos in which she scales buildings, leaps between rooftops, and climbs towering structures. The tattooed, shaven-head frog is at her most vulnerable while occupied with setting up her camera gear to record, having practiced her jumps, tested the winds, and psyched herself up for a stunt. 3. Bat. Bag the bat in the darkness and privacy of her lavish bedroom, whilst she slumbers in the soothing shawl of night. Her golden locks, the envy of all at her Ivy League university, will be glowing around her head like a halo on a Hungarian goose-down pillow, while she dreams of fame and stardom as a singer. Take care to wrap the bat's hair neatly around her head 3 times before removing her from her covers and spiriting her away through the unlatched window of her family's Haven Heights home. 4. Dog. Drag the dog from the smoking hut at the rear of a downtown comedy hall, where he smokes alone after a rough set. An up-and-coming stand-up comedian, his wit and sharp tongue are capable of cutting down hecklers with cruel precision. With thick skin but flimsy material, the dog can be secured when the night sighs with disappointment. His smartest punchlines of the evening, the edgy, heckler-baiting insults fresh on his lips. Unalert, his mind preoccupied with feelings of inadequacy, he will prove easy to batter and snare. 5. Dragon. Extract the dragon from the dressing room of a seedy adult film studio, where she sits before a mirror, her reflection betraying the exhaustion in her eyes. Once a promising young woman, the dragon is trapped in the heartless world she was forced into by debt and destitution, performing for cameras and men. As she waits to be recalled to set, white powder residue under her nose, flawless skin glistening under harsh lights, she can be subdued with a chloroform-soaked rag. 6. Dead man and virgin. The dead man and the virgin can be obtained together from the dead man's car as it idles at the edge of a cliff overlooking the bay. The dead man will be fresh from a strenuous workout, basking in the admiration of the virgin, a pleasant distraction. The infatuated virgin, surprised to have secured a popular male's attention, is keen to impress for validation. His cockiness and her insecurity are the perfect combination of toxicity, making them vital ingredients for the pot. As the virgin is coerced to take things to the next stage, anesthetic gas introduced to the vehicle through its exhaust pipe will render them ripe for the picking. 7. Witchetty grub. Remove from the stockpile in the larder, as previously instructed to prepare. B. Once acquired, transport ingredients to cellar and confine. Take care to label correctly. Wrong identification will result in incorrect ingredients introduced to the pot, spoiling the potency of the broth. C. Inflict sufficient emotional trauma over the course of 24 hours to ensure ingredients are primed. Fear and confusion should be present before proceeding. Screams, pleas for mercy, and despair are key to achieving optimal tenderness. Cooking instructions. Step 1. Eye of newt. Prep. Approach the newt chained in a corner, his fearful blue irised eyes wide. His youthful terror and questioning of the rebellious attitude that led to him falling in with the wrong crowd when he could have stayed home with parents who offered love and tried to teach him right from wrong will serve as a solid base flavor. Marinate. Let him feel the knife's serrated touch against his cheek, heightening his fear and emptying his bladder. Remain silent as you peer into his soul and exhale fetid breath onto his face. Smirk as you move the tip of the blade to the swollen, tear-infused bag beneath his left eye and start to shimmy it in. Allow the newt to scream as you pierce the eyeball, making your black, crooked teeth the last thing it sees. Harvest. Extract the eye swiftly, ensuring it stays moist. Sever the optic nerve with teeth and drop the excavated eyeball into the cauldron of bubbling broth, allowing its partner to watch from the head it remains housed in. Step 2. Toe of frog. Prep. Open the door to the cage of the naked frog, whose legs twitch as they struggle against their restraints. Her death-defying leaps and infinite recklessness have been reduced to paralysis and nervous kicks. This now caged force of once unstoppable urban adventure will add a tangy zest to the mix. Marinate. Trace a wart-covered finger along the side of a foot, then over each one of her toes, drawing out a series of gasps. Let her realize that no jump can save her as she shirks away. Grab the foot firmly and place the blade against its biggest toe, making it quiver and curl. Watch the frog's face contort and savor her cries as the knife digs deep into the skin. Harvest. Sever the toe at the joint. Allow it to twitch in your fingers as she cries in pain. Eyes locked on the almost insignificant but oh so important digit that aids with her balance. Drop the wriggling toe into the cauldron, letting its spasms add ripples to the broth. Step 3. 150 g of wool of bat. Prep. Release the bat from her crate and comb out her lustrous locks, tangled and matted from confinement. The scent of confusion and fear for her life is sickly sweet, but the odor of her wounded pride outweighs it. Even in captivity, the bat's thoughts fixate on her unwashed hair, the long, golden strands that are the source of her appetizing appearance. Marinate. Run fingers through hair, untangling strands with care and soothing the bat with gentle shushes. Admire its luster. Appreciate its silky, smooth feel. Let your withered flesh tingle under its softness. Watch her grimace through tears, trying to coax out some mercy. Then grip a handful of hair and yank back her head. Lift the shears and slide their rusted edges either side of the strands, savoring the scream that slips forth with the snip. Harvest. Shear off 10 handfuls of finest silken hair and place on weighing scales until 150 grams of the bat's identity are harvested. Let her sob uncontrollably as she watches her beauty diminish, mourning the loss of her hair like the frog mourns her toe. Toss the locks into the cauldron and stir, imbuing the soup with a peppery nuance. Step 4. Tongue of dog. Prep. Leave the dog tied to his chair, blindfold in place, but remove the gag from his mouth. His trademark smirk will be absent, replaced with the babbling pleas that come from an understanding that no witty repartee can save him. Allow him to lick his dry lips one last time, moistening them with the mock-yielding lubrication that gives them their tartness. Marinate. Let the dog wield his words like weapons, shouting, cursing, trying to bargain with a devil. Stand quietly as he struggles against his restraints, powerless in the face of unyielding malice. When his adrenaline-fueled vitriol falters, take his chin in a vice-like grip and tug his tongue from his mouth. Slide the shears over the muscle and ease them together. Harvest. Slice through the tongue, severing it cleanly at the base. Watch crimson blood spurt forth, filling the dog's mouth and coating his chin. The ragged stump will quiver as he chokes, his sharp tongue reduced to a useless lump. Toss the fleshy piece into the broth, seasoning it with the sourness of insults. Step 5. 10 scales of dragon. Prep. Remove the hood from the head of the dragon, where she lies strapped to a metal gurney. Dark circles under her eyes mar her otherwise flawless skin and the exotic looks that brought her success. Her fingers tremble from the withdrawal, gnawing at her veins, while the makeup caked on her face fails to conceal the bitterness that came from a life she never wanted. Bitterness that will add complexity to the brew. Marinate. Stand behind the dragon and caress her cheeks, pressing into plump, pillowy skin. Feel her body freeze as your nails scratch the surface. Hear her breathing quicken as she wonders what new hell is about to unfold. No words will leave her lips, even when the razor is brought into view and left to hover over her nose. But the flicker of horror in her eyes will betray her terror. Bring the blade down and slice through her supple cheek like butter. Harvest. Carve 5 1/3 strips of skin from each cheek. As her flesh peels away, suppressed screams will at last fill the cellar, and blood will soften the dried-up makeup on her face. Drop each strip into the cauldron, watching as they sink into the broth, the beauty that defined her, infusing the mixture with a savory depth. Step 6. A pinch of dead man's blood. Prep. Circle the dead man as he dangles from a meat hook, kicking and thrashing. This man, this bully, this self-obsessed, so-called alpha male who has spent his life stepping on others, viewing women as objects and treating people as conquests, will add an acrid taste to the blend, which, when balanced with the richness of the other ingredients, will create something truly sensational. Marinate. Lunge from the front and use shears to cut his shirt from waist to neck. Expose chiseled abs and toned chest, then replace shears with dagger and start to stab. Apply slight pressure at first, tenderizing the flesh with shallow punctures, enough to extract delicate beads of blood. The dead man's bravado will crumble as the jabs become deeper. Wait for the realization that he cannot escape to appear in his eyes. Then draw the dagger back and plunge it with full force into his chest. Harvest. Guide the blade through ribs into the dead man's heart. Watch the fire in his eyes fade as his life-giving treacle spills out. With the dagger protruding from his chest, hold a tarnished teaspoon close to the wound. Wait for his last wheezing breath to rattle out, then catch a drop of syrup in the spoon, drizzling it into the cauldron to add pungency. Step 7. A drop of virgin's tear. Prep. Release the virgin from the cupboard under the stairs. Take her by the arm and drag her from the dark into the cellar. As her eyes adjust to the light, let her witness the gruesome sight of her dead boyfriend hanging from a hook, blood beneath him. Marvel at the way in which she mourns him and howls in torment, her naivety and emotional dependency preventing her from seeing he is no loss, her saved innocence promising a nectarous punch. Marinate. Stand back and let the scene unfold. Listen to the virgin's cries grow louder. Watch her collapse onto the cold, hard floor and crawl away. Witness her growing terror as her eyes go from eyeless, newt to toeless frog, from hairless bat to tongueless dog, from red-faced dragon to dangling dead man, again then to you. Approach slowly, sponge in hand, and Digya at her tear-soaked cheeks, harvest. Allow the sponge to be saturated with untainted tears, rich in sorrow. Then leave the virgin to curl up in a ball, covering her ears, squeezing her eyes shut, crying as she tries to deny reality. Carefully squeeze the sponge out over the cauldron, letting her essence and purity drip into the broth, enriching it with subtle, candied sweetness. Step 8. Witchetty grub. Drop the withseti grub into the pot as a final garnish. Stir 6 times. Cover, then leave to ferment. Serving. Decant the concoction into a jar. Screw on a rubber teat, sealing in its rich, aromatic flavor. Suck a single drop into your mouth. Feel your body shudder as the magic flows through it, transforming your hair and your skin, restoring your youth. Indulge a fit of cackling, your voice echoing through the chamber. Then offer a word of gratitude as you depart. Optional flourish. Before leaving, kiss a spell-cast crystal and roll it to the center of the floor. In time, when the ingredients feel brave enough to assist one another, they will turn their traumatized gaze upon it, each seeing in it the future they have been spared. The newt, murdered by his gang after failing as a lookout during a hit. The frog, falling to her death as a result of an overly ambitious jump. The bat, caught in a house fire, her hair igniting to prevent her escape. The dog, stabbed by a heckler after an insult goes too far. The dragon, overdosing to escape the life her looks keep her trapped in. The virgin, dying at the hands of the abusive dead man. Extract from Witchetty Grub, Edition 7. Recipes for preservation. Broths using humane ingredients and ethical processing methods. Dig deep. Other than a faint glow coming from one of the back rooms, the town's charity shop was in darkness, its front door firmly closed. Although it had opened in 1985, the building had been used commercially since the 1800s, when it had variously been a pharmacy, a bank, and a tavern. The shop was close to the river in Marpleton, a pleasant English market town which had once been home to a nearby priory. In ancient times, monks had wandered back and forth to sell their wares at a market which still existed in diminished form across the road. Regulars were now peering through the shop window, but the main lights stayed off. A few of the shop's helpers were huddled in the back room. Patrick, the treasurer, had collected the spare keys from the greengrocer to let them in. The gatherers were addressing one topic, namely, why their long-serving manager, Ria, had failed to open up the day before. I just can't understand it, Ivy, one of the shop's founding members, said. I've never known her not to turn up, unless she's on holiday. In all the years I've known Rhea, she's never had a day's sickness. Wasn't she going to New Zealand to visit her sister? Patrick asked. She was, but not until the following week. It's in the shop diary. Here, take a look. Ivy tapped the relevant pages meaningfully. I'm not doubting you, Ivy, but she may have got the dates wrong. She wasn't in the habit of making mistakes. Ivy's loyalty knew no bounds. Patrick adopted a different approach. You've tried Rhea's landline, I take it, several times. Each time, it went straight to answer phone. Right. Still, I expect we're worrying over nothing. But you have to admit, she has been a bit distracted lately, someone piped up. Patrick turned to Silvana hopefully, but she shook her head. I've tried her on her mobile, but nothing. Silvana was a refugee who had joined the shop 2 years earlier. Since Rhea had taken her under her wing when she first came to England, her English had improved markedly. Silvana had been on the verge of admitting her true feelings for Rhea. Reality had crushed the likelihood of her returning to her homeland anytime soon, and been replaced by something entirely unexpected. An overwhelming love for another human being. Silvana's great wish was to know whether that love was returned. Rhea clearly liked her, but was it worth risking their friendship for more? The path to such an admission seemed littered with obstacles. Now, the mystery of Rhea's whereabouts could be added to an already growing list. Did Rhea say anything about changing her holiday plans, Silvana? Patrick asked, determined to get to the bottom of things. No, I went to her house for my lesson last Wednesday. She told me she'd be away all next week. Silvana had considered the matter carefully. Yes, that is so. Patrick said. I guess I'll have to contact the area manager about reopening the shop. You'll need to do that. Volunteer phone numbers are stored in the locked cabinet, and only Rhea has the key, Ivy interjected. Head office have contact numbers too. Everyone knew Rhea always carried a set of keys on a fob attached to a waistband. Patrick joked she secretly had a cellar key for the shop's more trying customers, to which he'd received an enigmatic smile. The actual cellar key had supposedly vanished in the mists of time. Certainly, there was no call to use the cellar with ample storage space elsewhere. In any case, the cellar door was kept permanently locked, preventing anyone getting trapped if there was a fire. Patrick scrutinized the rota sheets. Maybe Judd would be willing to help if we reopen the shop, he suggested. Silvana, who distrusted Judd, said nothing. 3 months earlier, dressed in black jeans and hoodie, and trailed by a mournful cocker spaniel, Judd had shown up to inquire about volunteering. When Silvana had bent to pat his dog, it had backed off, whimpering. She gets nervous round new people, Judd had explained. Tucking away the banking money, Patrick had gone to fetch Rhea. A young man's inquiring about volunteering, he'd told her. Shall I send him through? What's he like? Ria was wearily tapping information into the computer at her desk. He seems pleasant enough. His dog's rather nervous. Ria massaged her aching neck. "Send him through," she said. Ria had confided in Silvana about her difficulty in getting references for Judd Dig Deep. Eventually, he'd presented her with 2 typed ones, supposedly from an ex-employer. With typical thoroughness, Ria had rung one of the numbers to learn more about the new helper. When a voice answered, sounding suspiciously like Judd's, she'd intended to investigate further. However, other things had intervened. A few weeks after this uncharacteristic omission, Judd was indeed proving to be an asset. Willing to turn his hand to anything, it was a relief not having to lift heavy sacks and boxes donated by the public from one end of the shop to the other. With little guidance, Judd had transformed one of the sorting rooms, leaving it immaculate. One evening, when Silvana cycled past the back of the shop, she noticed a group of undesirables hanging with Judd, engrossed in conversation. She hurried past, hoping she hadn't been seen. She raised her concerns to Ria, who told her it was nothing to worry about, that she'd keep an eye on things, and bafflingly added, "I'd rather you didn't mention this to anyone else." And the day the shop reopened, without Ria at the helm, was Silvana's birthday. Patrick invited her to join him later for one of his wife's specials, homemade pizza and pear wine. The food tasted delicious, but she pushed her plate to one side. "You're still worried about Ria, aren't you?" Patrick observed. "Her cell phone is dead. It's strange. I knocked on her door last night, but still no answer." Patrick got up. "I tell you what, I happen to know Ria's neighbor, Angela, from the book club. She looks after the garden when Ria goes away. She may well have a spare key. I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, but it wouldn't do any harm to check if everything is all right." Silvana was relieved. "That's a great idea. Thanks, Patrick. I've been known to have a few in my time. Come on, get your coat. Let's see if we can solve this mystery." Half an hour later, the pair were standing in Ria's house. The hallway led into an open-plan kitchen diner with gleaming countertops and state-of-the-art gadgets. The smell of coffee lingered invitingly. When Ria's partner, Lindsay, had died 5 years earlier, she'd left her with a generous insurance payout. Silvana sighed, remembering the other day when she and Ria had drawn close over a bottle of wine. Ria had even given her a present, only to be opened on your birthday, she instructed. But beneath the gaiety, she'd been out of sorts. Ria had brushed aside Silvana's offer of help with a brisk, "I'm fine. I'll check down here if you do upstairs," Patrick said, jolting Silvana back to the present. The passport was lying on the bedside table. However, the photograph bore little resemblance to the person Silvana had come to love and admire. Having spent time working for a private detective agency when she was younger, instinct overrode caution, and she began a meticulous search for clues. Predictably, Ria's shop keys were lying on the bedside table. More unexpected was the discovery of another set of keys attached to a ring with a tag labeled cellar. "Are you all right?" Patrick called up from the bottom of the staircase. "I'm okay." Silvana tucked the cellar keys into her bag. Then she remembered Ria's present and opened it. She was surprised to find a pay-as-you-go phone, already charged up. "Well," Patrick exclaimed, "did you find anything?" "Just this." She gave him the passport. "That's odd. It appears she never made it to New Zealand after all. Maybe it's time to involve the police." "What? Right now? It is rather late. I doubt they'll want to be disturbed tonight." Patrick thought of the half-opened bottle of wine waiting back home. "I'll act tomorrow morning. Shall I walk you back?" "No need. I can take care of myself," Silvana said firmly. Casa. The moon was her only companion as Silvana descended the cellar steps at the back of the shop. With growing unease, she encased her hands in a pair of gloves and took off her shoes. She didn't want anyone to know of her presence. After 3 attempts, the door creaked open, and she was met by a cloying damp, overlaid by something else, something unpleasant. Tensing, she flicked on her phone torch and spotted a narrow corridor with another door at the end. Filled with foreboding, she slowly turned the handle. She smelt the body before she saw it. Wearing the trademark hoodie, the bloating, discolored thing in front of her, could hardly be called human. Judd lay slumped against an upturned table, his eyes staring and opaque. Silvana covered her face with a handkerchief to prevent retching and inspected the scene, noting the bloodied head and smashed vase lying beside it. The blood had pooled and dried, staining the clothes and floor. She was no expert, but if the rotting undertones were anything to go by, death had probably occurred a few days earlier. Even then, horror was blunted by relief. So long as it wasn't Ria, she had the strength for anything. But where was Ria? Adjusting to the dimness, Silvana tried to make sense of her surroundings. Some crudely constructed shelves, filled with storage tubs and packets, lay stacked against one of the walls. The place was obviously some kind of drugs den. Could Judd's death have been the result of a disagreement with other gang members? Silvana's stomach lurched. What if they turned up and found her? She'd only just locked the cellar door and picked up her shoes when she heard voices on the driveway. Somehow, she managed to scramble behind one of the bins underneath the fire escape. Hardly daring to breathe, she waited until the scuffling feet passed, and the gang disappeared down the cellar steps. Then, she bolted into the night as fast as her trembling legs would carry her. She would decide what to do when she got home. So, halfway across the town's park, muffled ringtones came from her bag. "Silvana?" The voice was clear as day at the other end of the line. "Ria, is it really you? Thank God. Are you all right? Where are you calling from? Talk to me. If I tell you, you must keep it to yourself." Ria said urgently. Of course. By the way, I have your keys. The shop keys? The cellar keys. Long story. I have just been down there. I found him. Judd. Dead. It was horrible. Silvana began to laugh hysterically as the shock kicked in. You went into the cellar? Ria repeated. Why? I needed to know if you were all right. I was so afraid. I was going to find you, not him. When I saw your passport, I knew you couldn't have gone abroad. That something must have happened. I didn't get the chance. What happened? I will tell you, but not now. Not on the phone. Patrick is planning to go to the police tomorrow about your passport, Ria asked. Did you touch anything when you went into the cellar? Did you touch him? No. Silvana's teeth were chattering from shock. It's cold outside. I was wearing gloves. But what do you know about Judd? Why were you wearing gloves? I don't know. I had a bad feeling. I didn't want to be implicated in anything. Back home, I once worked at a detective agency. I learned about not touching crime scenes. You may want to call the police, Ria said. But please, can I ask you not to tell them I got in contact? Or about me giving you the phone? We'll meet soon. That is, if you want to. I'll understand if you don't want anything more to do with me. Of course I want to meet you. It seemed silly pretending now. It's all I think about. Cha. Silvana's heart flipped when she saw the distant figure standing on the pier below. The matinee performance at the Pavilion Theater was in full swing, and the pier was almost deserted. She came up behind Ria, patting her on the shoulder. Hey, Ria turned, instantly relaxing when she saw her friend. Hey. Silvana sank into Ria's arms. For a long time, the pair embraced. It's so good to see you, Silvana said. Likewise. Ria glanced round. Does anyone know you're here? No. And I'm so hungry. Ria grinned. How about some fish and chips? I'll treat you. You mean the famous English fish and chips? Ria grinned. I've discovered a great place on the front. She linked arms with Silvana. Come on, let's eat. Then I'll tell you everything. Cha. Judd was a bad lot, Ria admitted later. He was running a drug racket, and I threatened to report him to the police. It doesn't surprise me. But how did you find out? Not long after I joined the shop, I was clearing up one of the back rooms and came across a discarded cabinet. There were 2 sets of cellar keys in it. I never told anyone about them, partly because I didn't want a lot of fuss. I wanted to keep it to myself. Unfortunately, Judd caught me coming up the stairs one evening and demanded to store his things there. I didn't like the way he spoke to me. When I refused, he threatened to torture his dog in front of me. He implied if I didn't comply, I'd be next. His eyes were so cold. For the second time in my life, I felt real fear. There would be time enough to ask about the first time, Silvana thought, clasping Ria's hand. I'm afraid there's more, Ria said dully. You probably won't want anything to do with me when you hear the rest. Silvana clutched Ria's hand more tightly. She'd come too far to be brushed aside. Why don't you let me be the judge of that? she said firmly. Whatever it is, we'll bear it together. You see, I love you. I need you to know that. You do? For a moment, Ria's face shone. That's a relief, she said, laughing. I thought it was just me. Did you? Silvana laughed too. I may have had my suspicions, but I didn't want to say anything. Oh, I'm so happy, Silvana said. But hold your horses before we get carried away, Ria warned. Hold my horses? An English expression. It means don't count your chickens. Count my chickens? Silvana, my love, let me finish my story before you say anything. Okay, sorry. Silvana nibbled a stray chip. Ria was smiling in spite of everything. In the end, I couldn't stand being held to ransom by a bully like Judd. A few days ago, I foolishly decided to confront him in the cellar. He went to grab a knife from the table. There was an old jar on one of the shelves, and as he turned, I smashed it over his head. She shuddered. I couldn't tell you all this, but I made sure you had the phone before I left. I hoped you'd stay in touch. The day after, I headed here. Not wanting to be traced, I paid for everything with cash. But surely the police will realize you only acted in self-defense, Silvana insisted. Perhaps I should have gone to them straight away, but I couldn't face it. Ria's hesitation was palpable, especially considering what? In spite of the warmth between them, Silvana felt a sudden chill, like someone walking over a grave. What aren't you telling me? Ria's voice broke. I'm terminally ill. At best, I only have months to live. At worst, it will be weeks. I have all the medication I need. I just want to spend my last days in a place with happy memories. I can't believe it. But Silvana knew Ria was speaking the truth. She tried to disguise her anguish. How long have you known? She whispered. I only found out for certain the day before Judd threatened me in the cellar. Maybe I wasn't thinking straight. I should have told the police everything long before, but by then, I was in too deep. I'm going to stay with you. Silvana had never been more certain of anything. Ria shook her head. Stay with me tonight, and go back tomorrow. It won't be long before the police check the cellar. It will look odd if you're not there. I have every faith in your survival skills. Look how far you've come. In the meantime, there's something I want you to have. What is it? Ria handed Silvana 2 envelopes. Inside one is a plan of the cellar. After years of searching, I think I may have finally uncovered the sealed entrance to a tunnel leading to the old priory. My father was a historian and suspected there might be one near the shop. The other is a copy of my will. It's my final and dearest wish to make your life better when I've gone. Oh, muse. Oh, catharsis. My legs were on fire by the time they left the ground. I surged upward like a spark, stretching my arms toward the ceiling, grabbing, reaching. I landed hard on my calloused soles. Once more, then, I leapt, gaining height. The The third jump took me higher still, and as I returned to the floor, catching sight of myself in the mirror, I rolled my whole body downward. I found a strange foundation there in the scuffed surface, and I allowed this discovery to take root in the depths of my stomach. It tugged me to the ground like a magnet, providing momentum as I sank. I felt my whole body contort with it, bending in half, caught, flailing like a moth in a web. "Stop! Stop!" His voice echoed sharply off the white walls, the beating of a mighty drum. It startled me out of my panting half-trance, and Louisa, the stage manager, a severe, spectacled woman in a beige blouse, reached out a hand to pause the tape player. The music, that music, driving, discordant, utterly electric, screeched to an abrupt halt. There was silence. Tugging down my shirt, I averted my gaze from the mirror and extended one leg, gently trying to loosen my muscles. But booming in that same voice, the voice of the giant that he was, he rose from his chair and began to circle me like a desert bird. "You're dragging, Hector," he said. "You're descending into the earth too slowly. You understand? You lack impetus." His words rattled his throat as though it were an iron cage. "The dance is precise. That is the challenge of it, yes? It looks wild. It feels wild when you are in it, I know, but it is precise. It is specific. Every motion has intention. 1, 2, 3. He slammed his foot with each word, punctuating them with the thump, thump, thump of his shoe. He rocked his pelvis down, trying to mime for me what exactly I was ruining. And while he could no longer exert himself the way he could in his youth, I saw the whisper of strength in his limbs, the dancer, the echo of the titan he once and still was. At that moment, I hated myself for dancing badly. Really, the only thing worse than dancing badly is knowing that you are dancing badly, that others can tell you are dancing badly. I never imagined I would dance badly before Dimitri Lamoureux. I never imagined I would be dancing this piece before Dimitri Lamoureux, choreographer, director, writer, living legend. He had, in his prime, created 6 variations of what he called human dramas with music. Not quite musicals, but real, honest-to-God works of art. And in my mind, they still towered over the blockbusters dominating Broadway at the time. Louisa, his longtime collaborator, had worked on every premiere and some revivals, such as this one. Lucky her. Lamoureux had practically invented a new language of movement, a language which would inspire crude imitation after crude imitation. Yet, nothing compared. He had flown close to some secret glory, some cosmic thing that no other artist had ever even glimpsed. He was Icarus, never fallen, and I was just me, stupid, out-of-work me. Through dumb luck, I never believed they really liked me in that singing prescription pill commercial. I would actually get to perform No Place, the No Place, that seminal solo dance from Human Drama with Music #1, Catabasis. It was not quite a featured 20-minute dream ballet. No. In fact, it had been described by at least one critic as a night terror. Primal, cerebral, something that burrowed into a person's head. It was a career maker, though. The role of the dancer had no dialogue, and sure, it spent most of the show backstage. I hadn't even rehearsed with the rest of the cast yet, but if I could step out and command the room for just 6 minutes and 18 seconds, I would get to do this and nothing but this forever, until my body gave out. And I wanted that more than anything. I saw a grainy recording of No Place on PBS as a child. Flipping through the channels in that little apartment, my knees digging into the living room carpet, I paused as a lone figure emerged onto a darkened stage. Dressed in gray fabric, hunched in a solitary white spotlight, his body heaved with bracing breaths. Ignited by a swell of wind and the crash of drums, he spun in a circle before bending backward completely, with a flexibility I could only hope to one day possess. With each movement, though, with each count, I found myself drawing closer and closer until I was practically pressed flush against the screen, near enough that I could feel the cold static pricking the skin of my face. Poised like that, I extended both my arms outward and began crudely mirroring the dancer's steps. Back up, Hector. How many times do I gotta tell you? You're gonna burn your goddamn eyes out, my father growled. Coming up behind me, he ripped the remote from my hands and changed the channel. He barked at me for blocking the picture, but I had already seen the dance. I had seen it, and having seen it, I craved it, like I had tasted blood. And from that day forward, I devoured TV listings whenever I found them, flipped through magazines in grocery stores, or turned on the guide channel to let it roll. Blue in the static dark, searching, hoping it would appear again. I had asked my mother for lessons once, I remember, but she never really gave me an answer. I think she hoped I would simply forget. Not because she didn't want me to have them, no, but because he wouldn't have wanted me to. I had overheard one morning a suggestion that he would smash my toes if he caught me standing on them, like a ballerina. I figured she had broached the subject. Either way, they aired the recording of Catabasis again in the autumn, very late at night, long past the hour I would be in bed, or sensible people would be watching. But I had planned for it. For weeks, I had been saving wherever I could. Change from lunch or from errands to the corner store, standing in the doorway to my bedroom, one eye on the alarm clock, I, knowing I couldn't be late, clutched the blank VHS tape to my chest. I had scrounged up just enough to buy it for this singular, solemn purpose. I had made this walk many, many times. The long corridor past my parents' bedroom to the living room. And I knew, by then, that I had to take the trek in threes, extending my legs every third step to avoid the spots where the floor creaked. I listened to my father's snoring, holding my breath as I moved, 3 by 3, avoiding the noise, avoiding the discovery, only to take off running as soon as I felt carpet. Hurrying to the television, I muted it with the remote before shoving the tape into the VCR. And as soon as I was sure that little red light was blinking, I watched. Yeah, I watched. And I mirrored the silent movements as if compelled, as if called. And while I didn't learn to dance for real until high school, when I could spend more time outside the house, I did dance for real that night. I hid the tape in a corner of my closet and snuck it out again and again, whenever the opportunity arose, until it broke and I couldn't even rewind it anymore. I'm sorry. I'm in my head. I can do it, I said at last, speaking to Lamoureux in the mirror of the rehearsal room. I shifted my eyes to the floor, but he pulled up my chin, forcing me to look at myself. I know you can, Hector. We saw it in your audition. Do that. Shall we run the section again? Louisa asked. Her finger hovered over the tape player. No. I'm tired of sections. We've been doing nothing but sections. Let's weave them together now. He needs to feel the full scope. Yes? He locked eyes with my reflection. You can do the full piece? From the top? I nodded, because I did not know what else to do. And I realized in that moment that, more than anything, I wanted to impress him. I didn't want him to regret entrusting me, of all the dancers in the world, with this most sacred thing. And so I lapsed into my pre-routine. Walking in a circle, the wood cold beneath my feet, I counted my steps in threes, stretching my legs at every third, out of habit or tradition or superstition. I rolled my hands downward next, running my pointer finger along each of my toes, counting out all 10 before taking my place before the mirror. Lamoureux settled back in his chair with a grunt, and turning to Louisa, I gave a nod. She pressed a few buttons, and with a low analog whir, the music began. I exhaled, my whole chest heaving, and counting to myself, I began. Turning, whirling, writhing, I bent myself backward, stretching my entire torso. Lamoureux, too, began keeping time, stomping away with his foot, watching every movement I made, driving me forward. taking hold of the energy I was hurling out into the space. Thump, 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 thump. Each beat seeped into me, filling the pores of my thrashing body and setting my muscles ablaze. I blinked, and at first, I was not even sure I had seen it. It began as something of a flicker of light, a vague shadow over my left shoulder, almost a smudge on the mirror. The music hastened, and Lamoureux thumped time. And as if keeping up with it, the thing in the glass moved. I spun too, and it seemed to spin with me. But locked into the dance, I did not stop to look. No, I spun. And I spun lost completely. And with each turn, the shape seemed to take more solid form, until I, facing the mirror, panting, aching, could see it, really see it. Skeletal limbs, impossibly long, arachnid almost, pulsed with tendons and throbbing red veins. It swayed back and forth, collapsing and contorting in on itself, creating and uncreating, almost imitating my movement, but stretching them to the mocking brink. It was a figure, a rotting husk, forged as if from teeth and flesh and living darkness. It moved in a way nothing I had ever seen moved. Choreographed chaos. A star imploding in on itself. A jellyfish. And yet, a man bending completely in half, twitching. It flipped its torso upside down, and its swollen head smacked the floor with a sickening, wet crunch. Somewhere beneath the thumping, I thought I could hear a raw, splintering noise, one that could burrow into a person's skull, digging like claws through grave dirt. Its spine had shattered, I thought. It had snapped itself in half, and yet continued to move. Beneath the music, I could hear the sick, screeching grind of bone on bone. Thump, thump, thump. I leapt, then just as I had leapt before, unable to stop. I stretched my arms upward, once, twice, 3 times. The thing leapt with me, limbs flailing, fingers breaking, twisting and cracking as it furled them toward the ceiling. I cried out, landing hard on the floor, traveling too far in the final leap, plummeting askew. The illusion broke. I rolled upward, legs burning, trying to catch my breath. I almost thought I would vomit. And when I looked, there was nothing in the mirror. Oh, why don't we take a break? Louisa was the one to crack the strange stillness that settled over us. Her voice firm as she stood from her chair and pierced the catacomb that the rehearsal room had become. Step into the hallway, Hector. Are you all right? Do you need me to file an injury report? Why don't you get some water? I was working too hard, I thought, as I slumped against the wall in the corridor. Closing my eyes, I took a long swig from my bottle, using the back of my hand to wipe away the layer of sweat that now drenched my brow. The shape in the mirror flashed into my thoughts like a thunder crack. I winced. There had been nothing there, I decided. Of course there had been nothing there. Nobody else had reacted, so there had been nothing there. An absent-minded hand came down to rub my knee through my tights, and for a moment, I was a little kid again. I could feel the living room carpet digging into my bare legs as I let my thoughts drift to that apartment, to my mother, to my father, and to that low-quality VHS recording, to the countless nights I spent caught in the dull glow of the television, dancing in the dark. Louisa came to collect me 15 minutes later, and as I stepped back into the rehearsal room, assuring her I was just fine, I saw that she had taped a wide blue circle onto the floor. "You traveled too far last time," Lamoureux said from his perch. I had Louisa mark the edges of the stage. It's shaped like a disc. You must stay within the circle, understand? Are you ready to try again? Yes, but I was just thinking. I mean, sitting out there, I know why I'm falling behind. I first saw this piece on television, the PBS recording, you know, hundreds of times, and the dancer only jumps once. During the climax, I mean, he only jumps once. I'm jumping 3 times, I explained. It throws off the next measure for me, so I'm behind the music, and then I rush. Louisa dropped her script on the floor, interrupting me and catching Lamoureux's attention. He looked back to me after a moment. "I remember that dancer from the recording," he said. "He was a last-minute replacement. He was not like you. He lacked stamina. He lacked strength. Could not do all 3 jumps and keep going, so we had to alter it. The cameras were already there, and the show must go on, yes? But you have the ability to perform the piece as conceived, Hector. It's why we chose you. 3 jumps. Forget what you know. Watching him, I felt something strange fluttering in my stomach. Maybe it was nausea. Maybe it was embarrassment at him trying to flatter me. But it was enough. I walked my circle of 3s, counted my toes, and straightened up. And looking at Louisa, I gave a nod. The music began. It was different this time, I thought. My whole body struck by a new momentum. I lurched to the left and then to the right, writhing downward, finding each moment, each breath, each precise movement. Lamoureux was not thumping, and while I only caught glimpses of him as I spun, something odd bubbled across his face. Excitement, maybe, or pleasure, and I had done it, I thought. I had danced before the master, and at last I had done it well. Still, I found that I dared not look in the mirror. Not really. Dared not allow my eyes to focus too long on my reflection, lest I see the mover. Some part of me, even then, thought maybe it was still lurking there. I jumped. Once, twice, 3 times, extending my arms, my feet finding the floor as I plummeted down, sinking into the earth. I rolled, discovering that solid foundation again, finishing the dance with one final gasp as the music surged and ended in a cacophony. I had done it, panting, soaked, breathless. I looked up, then my limbs ablaze. I looked up, and there simply was no mirror. In its place, there was only an unbroken wall of black, an abyss. Something moved within it, though, dancing through the void, crunching, whirling, twisting, and thumping. I watched it now, watched the way it transfigured itself. It was almost divine. Some odd part of my brain thought, the way it moved, like nothing else had ever moved. Stunning, yes? Lamoureux said, coming up behind me as I knelt there. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Louisa joined him, and all 3 of us looked. Do not be afraid. It dwells there in the dark. No man in no place. Yes, always there, I think, just beyond what we can see, at least until we descend into it ourselves. He laughed. Do not look for the dead in the glass. You'll not like it. He squeezed my arm. The dance, exactly as devised. 3 jumps when not in public performance, thins the veils, allows us to see. A ritual, if you like. Are we artists, not magicians? And David danced before the Lord with all his might. Louisa and I have not seen in a long time. But I can no longer dance like you. What is it? I asked hoarsely. Do I know? A muse? It moves like the breath of the universe, walks the edge of it, an echo of what has always been. Maybe God. Reductive, but to filter even one part of it for mortal eyes, to be able to imitate some whisper of its aspect. Transcendent. Look, it's choreographing our next masterpiece. I don't understand. Inspiration chooses, Hector. It chose me. He ducked down to speak into my ear. I knew when you gushed about that videotape at your audition. Catabasis has never been recorded for broadcast. Why then did you and only you see it? How? To learn. My eyes widened. So be its filter, be its mirror, be sainted. I rose. I watched. My legs burned. Lamoureux had chosen me because it had chosen me. Yes, I thought. Yes, I wanted it. Me. Out of work, me. The filter. Chosen. I danced. You're my rock. The bride and groom danced their first dance together. The room dark, the spotlight on them. Imogen. Carlson tried and failed to grit her teeth. God, nothing was simple these days. Not even the simple acts of jealousy and resentment. How cruel this dance was to parade their beautiful normalcy for everyone to see. She glared. Her mother leaned over, but not too close. Gosh, no. And whispered into her ear, "Do try to smile, dear. You're positively green with envy. It is your cousin's wedding, after all. Couldn't you try to look happy for her? And do something about those straps, will you, dear? They're, slipping." She winced. Pun intended? But Imogen did as her mother requested. She was already on the fringes of society since her accident. She ought not to exacerbate things. Imogen sat upright straighter and forced a smile onto the thing the mirror insisted was her face. She then dug out the dress straps, which had started to dig into both shoulders. The married couple, hands clasped, faces inches apart, spun across the floor in sync. Now and then, they snuck a kiss, much to the delight of the onlookers, who cheered and whistled. The muscles beneath Imogen's eyes twitched. All she wanted was to stay at home and hide away in her room, behind the safety of closed curtains. Yes, lock herself away and await any news from the doctors and scientists. Of course, there was the possibility that they might never understand her issue or find a cure. Mom and Dad had said she couldn't isolate herself like a leper if that were the case. When she retorted that she was a leper, they'd only looked at her with wounded puppy dog eyes, and here they were, watching a couple do everyday things, like touching and kissing. She'd never experience these things again, unless she were okay with screams in response. The song wound to an end, and the crowd roared and applauded. The couple opened up the dance floor to friends and family, waving them over. The music changed from elegant to upbeat. Imogen's parents got up, hand in hand. Her father reached out for her, then stopped before he could hurt himself. "Would you like to?" he said, nodding towards the dancing mob. When he saw the slight shake of his wife's head, he answered himself, "No, I suppose you better not." Acidic bile stung the back of her throat. God, she wanted some cake. But she was afraid that people would watch her as she ate, horrified, but unable to look away. "Kill me now," she muttered under her breath. "Oh, if I did that, I wouldn't get to introduce you to Alan." Imogen jumped and yelped. It was Martin, the groom. He wore a tux and held a glass of white wine by the stem. He was smiling at her, a mischievous twinkle in his eyes, heart squelching in her chest. Imogen frowned. What was he here to do? Make fun of her? Pull a prank on her? She'd had enough of that from the local kids, who posted jelly packets through their letterbox. She supposed Mum had told her sister, who told her daughter and her groom-to-be. Not that they wouldn't have been able to see that something was wrong with her as soon as she showed up. During their first dance, The only light sources were the DJ's spotlight and Imogen's skin. "Who's Alan?" Martin's smile widened. He was tipsy. "An old school chum of mine. I thought you two would hit it off." Imogen's furrowed brow deepened. Martin had to be joking. And why on earth would anybody hit it off with someone like me? "You can see me, right? Because you're looking positively radiant tonight," said Martin with a wink. Imogen stared at him. He faltered. "Sorry, not funny." The corners of her lips twitched. She could see why her cousin liked this man. He was kind and genuine. "It was a little funny," she conceded. He relaxed. "Alan's a great guy, and he just arrived. He couldn't make it to the ceremony, otherwise you'd have definitely noticed him. There had to be a catch." "Okay, well, what's wrong with him then?" Martin nodded, as though he'd expected this. "Alan had a little accident a few months back. He's been struggling with it. I thought the two of you might have a lot to talk about." Imogen winced. Man, she had a tongue of acid sometimes, like the rest of her. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean..." She shook her head. "Yeah, sure. Why not? Let's meet the guy." Martin downed the last of his wine, set it on the table, and took a fresh glass from a passing waiter's tray. "Great. Come, I'll introduce you to him. He's right over there. Now listen, he's a little sensitive about his looks, but..." Martin stopped and looked at her, swaying. "I don't think you'll judge him too harshly on that account." Imogen gasped when she saw him. Alan was sat alone in the far corner of the room, where the shadows swam, nursing a drink. He appeared to be a stone golem. "Imogen," slurred Martin, gesturing back and forth. "This is Alan I was telling you about. Alan, this is..." Imogen stepped forward with a genuine smile for the first time in months. She cut Martin off. "Imogen," she said, "it's a pleasure to meet you, Alan." Alan groaned, eyes fixated on his drink, which the servers had served him in a metal beer stein. "Yeah, sure it is. You've had your look at me now." "I haven't finished having my look at you, Alan." Alan flinched, looked up, then gasped. "Oh," he said. "Oh," she answered. Martin laughed, his glass of wine half empty. "All right. I'll pat myself on the back and leave you two to get to know each other. Have fun." She sat beside Alan, who could not take his eyes off her. She removed her polyester gloves to reveal her transparent, gooey green skin. Car crash, 2 lorries, each carrying mutagenic agents, collided. Nobody was hurt, except for a certain Imogen Carlson. She was trapped in her Pinto when the chemicals combined to make something new. Now I can't touch organic materials without absorbing and dissolving them. Alan nodded. He'd ripped his suit where he'd tried to pull it on over his gravel surface. "I was backpacking alone when I got the phone call. that my mum had fallen down the stairs. I rushed home, taking a shortcut through the haunted mountains. I ignored all the warning signs telling you not to. I guess the mountains took it as an insult and cursed me to a life of cold stoniness. Mum's fine, by the way. Her heart ached for him. I'm sorry. Yeah, me too. Must suck not being able to touch anyone. Doctors much help? She shook her head. Nope. They've no idea. Mine neither. They said they've never seen any rock like it, that it doesn't seem to be organic. She gaped at him. She looked from her green, gloopy hand to his rocky one. She looked at him, a question in her eyes. Alan took a minute to register the importance of what he'd said, eyes widening. And then he smiled and answered the question by taking her hand with his. He did not scream. There was no bubbling or sizzling. Imogen did not feel the strange sensation of eating via something other than her mouth. She'd experienced it before, and it wasn't pleasant. Wow, she said, unable to say more. Alan leaned closer. Would you like to dance, Imogen? She thought about it, then threw her anxieties to the wind. Yes, I would, Alan. On their way to the dance floor, Alan stepped on a man's foot, breaking it. Alan didn't notice the screams for an ambulance. She had his complete attention. On their way to the dance floor, Imogen brushed a woman's hair with her ungloved arm, eating the strands. She didn't notice the little shriek or the woman's death glare. He had her complete attention. Doctors have called it thingification, after the thing from Fantastic Four. My guys are calling mine blebitis, like in The Blob. I see you've also spent a lot of time hiding away indoors, glued to the screen. I have too. Guess we're not so alone now, huh? She nodded. Question. The Blob. Original from 1958 or the 1988 remake? Alan pondered as they started to dance, a wide circle of empty dance floor opening up around them. The original's got its charms, but for me, the remake takes the cake. Blasphemy, I know. Imogen couldn't help but smile. Those were her thoughts exactly. She leaned forward and kissed him on his stony lips. When I first saw you, my legs turned to jelly. Alan, grinning after the initial shock of the kiss, pulled her close so they were dancing skin to skin. And when I saw you, it warmed my cold stone heart. Imogen sighed and rested her head against his chest. What a wonderful wedding, Bernice. Theme parks are the best. The roller coasters rule. But I didn't want to go into the House of Horrors. It looked dark and creepy, and I knew it was full of dead things and madmen, like the pictures on my dad's scary videos. That kind of stuff made my insides squirm and threaten to erupt buckets of puke. But Bernice had the tickets and me by the hand, and she was dragging me along, and wouldn't stop. What was I supposed to do? Sit down and cry? I'd look like a baby, and Bernice would laugh. It was the first time she'd talked to me, so I didn't want that. Instead, I let her lead me to that dirty, gray building with the gargoyle-covered, finger-like spires, which rose into the cloudless, midday sky like a giant, concrete hand waiting to grab us. My feet dragged. The ground felt like quicksand. But Bernice kept me out by moving fast, getting us to the looming mansion, safe and sound. I said nothing when she handed the tickets to the bored-looking teenager wearing a Raiders of the Lost Ark t-shirt who was manning the booth. I said nothing when he complained we were too young, but it was okay if we really weren't scared. I said nothing when Bernice told him our parents said it was fine and pulled me through the thick sheets of plastic that hung like strips of flesh in the open door. I could still feel Dad's hand on my shoulder, nudging me on like he had towards Bernice. It was like I was being carried by that same momentum as I stepped forward into the darkness. And then, there I was, in a haunted house in Pleasure Beach in Blackpool, holding hands with a girl from Northern Ireland. And I couldn't really believe this was me. Because if there was one thing I hated more than monsters, it was girls. Or at least, that's what I thought. Just a few minutes earlier, I'd been eating a burger at a white plastic picnic table on the veranda of the theme park family restaurant, sitting on a wobbly chair and slurping Coke while acting out a battle with my Star Wars toys. That's when I spotted the girl from our hotel, watching me from her seat a few tables away. It made me splutter Coke all over my Goonies t-shirt, because I hadn't expected to see anyone I knew here, so I hadn't been holding back on the sound effects. I tried not to go red as I looked away, sliding Vader and Luke into my lap. But I was glowing with embarrassment, so I failed. Like me, she was eating lunch with her family at one of the flimsy tables crammed into the packed restaurant courtyard. Like me, she was also trying to entertain herself while her parents babbled on about nothing, taking forever to finish eating and wasting precious attraction riding time. Except she was doing it in the less embarrassing way of juggling tennis balls. I knew her name was Bernice because that's what her sisters called her in the hotel lounge every evening, where I read Spider-Man comics, and she juggled. She made those balls go so fast, it was hard not to sneak a glance. She never even dropped one, and mostly, she wasn't even paying attention to what she was doing. I tried not to care. I tried not to think she was cool, with her straw-colored hair tied up in pigtails and those freckles on her nose that were kind of cute. But she kept catching me watching, which was annoying. It made her stupid. Older sisters giggle, whisper in her ear, and laugh. I knew they were talking about me. It made my cheeks tingle and burn, so I had to get up and leave the room. I always looked back as I did, and she was always staring after me, and now she'd seen me playing with my Star Wars toys. And for some reason, I felt really dumb. I didn't want to look at her again, with my red face and coke-stained shirt. But my head wouldn't stop, and when it turned, I got a horrible surprise. Bernice wasn't at her table anymore. She was standing right there beside mine, a tennis ball clutched in each hand. "Hey, my ma'am gave me tickets for a ride. Are you coming?" "What? Are you coming on a ride with me? I'm bored." "Go on, Kev," my dad said, nudging me out of my seat and pushing me towards her. Luke and Vader fell from my knees and hit the flagstones. "You kids go ride the Chair O planes. We'll be finished when you get back, and we'll do another roller coaster." I didn't have time to retrieve my toys, and I didn't want to be seen doing it anyway. They were my favorite ones, and I didn't want to lose them. But suddenly, Bernice's eyes and smile seemed more important. She stuffed her tennis balls into the pockets of her jacket, then grabbed me by the hand, and we were off, weaving our way through the tables and crowds out of the restaurant. Her sisters staring after us, sticking their tongues out and making kissy noises with their lips. And that was that. Except Bernice didn't want to go on the Chair O planes. And now I was in what looked like the dirtiest of dungeons, with plastic skeletons jiggling on the walls, dim red bulbs barely illuminating the hall, and the sound of recorded screams filling the air. My heart pounded like it was trying to break free, my breath catching with each shadow that stretched from the walls. The darkness seemed to tug at my limbs, squeezing tighter with every screech. I didn't like the plastic vampire sucking on the neck of a mannequin. I didn't like the wax werewolf with its snout stuck in the entrails of a scarecrow. I didn't like the life-size, glowering Jack the Ripper, blocking our path with his blood-stained knife. It wasn't just that. The whole place stank of mothballs and mold, a damp smell that reminded me of Gran's house when we'd gone to clear it out after she died. That same scent of damp or death. I wasn't sure which had stuck with me after just an hour in her house a year before. And it was back now, stronger than ever. And the air didn't just smell bad. It felt bad, like a horrible weight pressing down on me, squeezing the oxygen from my lungs, like Vader using the Force to crush a throat. I hated it, every bit, but Bernice loved it all. She squealed in delight at every discovery, pulling me through the halls at breakneck speed, barely pausing at each horrific sight before barreling us on to the next one, which was good in a way, as I didn't want to be there longer than necessary, but bad in another way, because I'd barely recovered from one scare before another leapt out. Frankenstein's monster staring wide-eyed on a table, blood-chilling. A trio of witches at a smoking cauldron full of bones, nerve-wracking. A pack of rabid dogs with drooling teeth, terrifying. And let's not talk about the clown. I tried not to show I was afraid. I mimicked her shoulders bobbing and her arms swinging when she laughed and joked around, and agreed the scary things were really cool. When she playfully pushed me towards the creature from the Black Lagoon, I made sure my intended yelp came out a giggle. When she said, grabbed my hand, and told me she was scared of Norman Bates, I bravely tightened my grip and said it was fine. I was glad it was dark, because that meant she couldn't see the expressions on my face, or how my eyes were squinting most of the time. I was gladder still when we rounded a final corner and saw the word exit. We were almost out. It had seemed like an age, but was probably only 5 minutes. Somehow, I'd made it without peeing my pants, and she had no reason to think I was a baby. With luck, she might even have forgotten Star Wars, and that's when it all went wrong. My ball, she gasped, releasing my hand to search in both her pockets. I lost one of my balls. Oh no, I replied, looking at the floor, hoping I'd find it. When did you lose it? I don't know, Bernice snapped, knocking me against the rickety wall as she pushed past. That's a stupid question. If I knew that it wouldn't be lost, I'm going to find it. She didn't wait for me to answer. Didn't wait at all. Just ran back into the corridor we'd come out of and disappeared. Bernice, I shouted, and my face tingled when I said her name aloud. Wait! She didn't. I stared at the corner she'd turned, hoping to hear her call back, listening for a trace of her, even her footsteps. But the wails from the speakers seemed to be getting louder and louder, seemed to be laughing at me now. I turned the other way and looked at the exit ahead. Green letters glowing in the darkness, which seemed even darker now I was alone. For a second, I thought about running, getting out of there and waiting outside. For a second, maybe 2. But deep down, I knew I couldn't do that. I didn't want her to think I was a wimp. Being brave was somehow important now, but it wasn't the only reason I decided to follow her. I wanted to make sure she was okay. Dad would have been angry if I didn't, if I'd left her alone and something happened. I'd heard him say to Mom how he hated himself for not visiting Gran more often, for not making sure she was okay. Bernice wasn't my friend, but she could be, and friends wouldn't leave each other alone. Not in a place like this, even if the threat was all fake, especially because the threat was all fake. So back around the corner I went, straight into the arms of the skinned alive man who reached for me from an alcove in the wall. I didn't make eye contact with his lifeless, wax eyes, because he looked bloody and hideous, and I hated him. I moved on, walking faster, retracing my steps through the corridors, peering into the darkness at the shadowy figures that lurked there, trying not to see them if they weren't her. My heart pounded faster. My feet moved quicker. The screams, laughs, seemed to grow louder the further I went. I started to imagine that some of those screams might be hers, that some creature made of wax had somehow grabbed her. And then I was running, starting to panic, taking a corner too fast, yelping when I ran into monsters. "Watch it!" One of them, with stringy hair, shouted, putting an arm out to stop me. "You shouldn't be here, you little dweeb. Where's your mother?" It didn't take me long to realize they were just a couple of teenagers, a boy and a girl, both with long hair, holding hands. Still, I ducked under the outstretched arm and ran past them. I don't know why. I should have asked for help, or even asked if they'd seen her, but they were teenagers. They wouldn't have cared. Coming around the next corner, I saw two things that stopped me in my tracks. The first was the naked old man in the bathtub, with his black eyes and bath cap, stubbly beard, and thin, bony arm in the air, holding a long-handled scrubber. This one wasn't a monster, not any I'd ever heard of, but somehow he scared me the most. I hadn't been able to look at him the first time around, had kept my eyes glued to the floor while Bernice giggled and peered into the bath. This time, I had to look, because the second thing I noticed was the tennis ball he was holding in his outstretched hand. "Bernice!" I hissed, gulping as I stepped towards the bathtub. "Are you there?" Screams, screeches, shrieks and squawks from above. I moved closer, keeping my eyes on the tennis ball and not on the face of the man. He wasn't real. I knew that. He was made of wax. He couldn't hurt me. He couldn't do anything. He couldn't move. So why was the ball in his hand? And why was Bernice in the bath? It took me a second to understand what I was seeing. Bernice, lying face down on the smooth surface of wax that was meant to be water, from which the old man was rising up, her short auburn hair fanned out around her head, skirt hitched up around her knees. "Bernice," I whispered again, doing everything I could not to cry. "Are you okay?" My legs bumped against the rim of the ceramic bathtub. I lifted one arm to reach out. My eyes flicked to the face of the waxwork, which was far too close, its horrible blank gaze boring into me. The red bulb above the bathtub flickered. My fingers touched the top of Bernice's head. Something, arms, grabbed me from behind. And something, voices, screamed in my ears on both sides. I screamed, staggered back, stumbled and fell to the floor. The flickering light bulb revealed two gangly forms, twisted shapes in the darkness, closing in around me, reached out their arms, making strange, slurping sounds that sounded like kisses. "Gotcha!" laughed one, and I knew straight away who it was. "Ha ha ha! You screamed like a little girl. Oh no, did you piss your pants? Oh, are you really scared? Do you want your mommy?" Bernice rose up in the bathtub, bumping the bulb and making it swing as her sisters danced around me, clutching their sides in laughter. The grin on her lips disappeared when she noticed the look on my face in the swinging light. "That was brilliant," laughed one of the girls, high-fiving the other above me. "Come on, Burr. Ma'am and Dad are waiting." And just like that, they were gone, racing away from the bathtub and the wax man and me on the floor and Bernice. And that's why I always avoided girls. I pushed myself up while Bernice climbed out of the tub and took back her ball. She had her back to me, and I had my eyes on the floor. She started to walk away, and I thought, good, go. Leave me alone with your stupid straw hair and ugly freckles. But then she stopped in her tracks and looked back. "Sorry," she said, and I looked into a pair of darting eyes. It was my sister's idea. Kind of stupid, kind of. I thought it would be funny. A good prank. But it wasn't. She came closer. "It was nice you came after me. I wasn't sure you would." I blushed, looked at my feet. I just wanted her to go. The screams from the speakers were better company. The lifeless creations populating the labyrinth were less likely to hurt me. Then, "Are you coming?" She lifted her arm and held out her hand, and I blushed even more and looked up. "We came in together. You're not gonna let me walk out on my own, are ya? One of the monsters might get me." She smiled. A small smile, apologetic. She was being friendly for real, and I liked it. I mirrored her smile and felt a flutter in my chest, something strange that made a lump catch in my throat. I had to swallow hard to get rid of it. "At least you have those tennis balls to throw, if it does." "Yeah, they make great weapons. Not as good as lightsabers, but here." She handed the one she was holding to me and took the other one out of her pocket. I thought of Luke and Vader on the ground back at the restaurant and wondered if they'd still be there when I got back. Mum and Dad definitely wouldn't have seen them. Any other time, the fear of losing them would have stabbed arrows of dread into my heart and had me racing back in a panic. But I didn't seem too bothered by it now. When Bernice offered her hand again, I took it. And then we were walking back the way we'd come, through the monsters and the noise towards the exit. The wailing house of horrors, with its hallways full of scares, closed in around us. But as we walked hand in hand through the corridors, past eerie figures, and through screams that now seemed to be quieter, I wasn't really afraid anymore. with Bernice by my side. It was like we were off on an adventure, like the Goonies in their subterranean caves. And even if our caves did house monsters, I realized they weren't so scary, and neither were girls.